with the first pick in the NFL draft.
Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag. We are back, Adam and I, for another Mock the Mock. We put it out again and you voted. And today we are doing Daniel Jeremiah's 1.0 draft. Adam, we did Mel Kiper's last week. It was really interesting, really good. We're now back with Daniel Jeremiah's. You looking forward to this one? Big name, one of the big dogs of the drafting mock draft.
One of the big dogs. Yeah, this is the guy who, I mean, this is who you see when you see the draft, isn't it? He's the one on the TV going through it all. So yeah, this be an interesting one to see. It could be I don't think there's too many shocks in there. I think there's quite a few that we kind of feel is where it's going to go. But yeah, it should be fun. And I'm sure he's done something stupid. They all do one thing that's stupid. So you know.
Wow, yeah, let's see what it is. I believe he did this one prior to the Super Bowl, so the order at the end is slightly different to what it is now, but I don't think that changes the picks too much. But we'll dive right into it. Again, no trades in this one. Too early for the trades. I think everybody's 1.0 is just straight up, here's the players sort of thing. So we'll have pick number 1, the Chicago Bears. No surprise. It is Caleb Williams.
Caleb Williams.
Sorry,
there's
trying to get rid of the video that was in the corner. Caleb Williams from USC. As he says, we've seen Justin Fields continue to improve, but believe GM Ryan Paul's decision number 1 overall will be an easy one. It's all the same things we said before, isn't it? Reset the clock, good prospect.
Yeah, makes complete sense. Best QB prospect in the class, as you said, reset the quarterback clock, which is what we have spoken about before. And the one thing I'd say, I mean, the odds have actually gone more in favour of them doing this, that they are going to do this. And you feel like the one thing I would say is that I think you can gamble it and sort of like throw away the first round pick to get the haul in one season. I don't think you can do it 2 seasons in a row, and so that's why it makes sense that you would reset it now and go for it now with Caleb Williams.
The odds are also starting to creep up on the betting websites of Justin Fields and where he's going to go. So I think it's almost inevitable this is going to happen. So we move on to pick 2. You can see it right there. It's Drake May. Again, no surprises with this one. I think, again, this is something that everybody else has got sort of posted in on their mock drafts as well.
Well, I don't think it is, actually. I think there seems to be a bit of a change where some people are putting Jaden Daniels out there as well. I don't get it. I don't understand why it's happening. I know that Drake May had a bit of a down year in the last one. Jaden Daniels obviously exploded as the Heisman Trophy winner. Just doesn't feel that, although that happened, that's what should happen here. I think Drake May is certainly a quarterback that is going to have a very long NFL career if he translates across. Jaden Daniels is, to me, a bit more scary given the fact of his lack of weight and his willingness to rush. And I remember watching some of them games for LSU and he was not sliding. You know, that was an issue. And that's, you know, if Anthony Richardson can get taken out for the season after about 5 games, then I dread to think what some defenders would be able to do to this guy. So I feel for that reason alone, I think that Drake May should be where he is. So I think that Jeremiah's got this spot on, really.
Yeah, I have as well. I keep saying that, you know, similar size, stature, a little bit like Josh Allen. The only difference I'd say is Drake May's been better at college than Josh Allen was. So, you know, it always points in a good direction for you. And as you can see right there, number 3, Jaden Daniels. So 3 quarterbacks off the board, first 3 picks seems to be the common theme. Daniels is definitely worth a gamble here. I know we were discussing a bit more. He's put there, while Marvin Harrison would be tempting here, the Patriots need to address the quarterback position. We've discussed this quite a bit between us, that we feel Marvin Harrison might actually be the right decision here, and they go after one of the veterans maybe. They've got the cap space, haven't they, to maybe bring in a Cousins or a Russell Wilson or something at this point.
Yeah, I think the fact that they can do something like that, it makes you question whether or not they will go for Jaden Daniels. I mean, you could argue that you'll use all that cap space to put weapons for him and players around him. So there's two different ways of looking at it. You could argue that you would trade back, knowing that Jaden Daniels is going to be there and that someone's going to want to come up for a quarterback. To me, it feels like it does feel a little bit of an unknown with New England, obviously without Belichick there. I know that, you know, Jared Mayo has come from the same sort of like organization. It's just a promotion basically. So it's not like it's all completely new, but there is a little bit of an unknown as to where to go. I like the idea of going for Harrison and then bringing, I mean, if you could get someone like Kirk Cousins and you've got the money to do it, to me, that seems like a bit of a no-brainer. And as we've said about Daniels, there is a size concern. So it's almost like you could do that. Then it's a question of, do you trade down and go and get someone like an offensive tackle to help your new quarterback, or do you go for it with Harrison? The fact that they're desperate for wide receivers, it does make you feel like Harrison would be a logical thing. But I can understand why he's picked Daniels, because they do desperately need a quarterback.
Well, depending on how far they trade down, there might be one of the other bigger name wide receivers like Adunze or Neighbors left, depending on how far they actually go down. So they might get a 2-for-1 deal there when in the moving down. So I'm not opposed for them to go a different direction in this. Number 4, the Arizona Cardinals, Marvin Harrison Jr. They definitely need help at wide receiver, don't they? It's been a bit of a mess, and that's the main place they've got to start. I think Kyler looked good once he came back. So, yeah, definitely go and get him a weapon and see what you can build from. You've got 2 first-round picks.
Yeah, Hollywood Brown is a free agent this year. Michael Wilson is there, but obviously he hasn't played that much. So, yeah, you need a star wide receiver if you're in this position. If Marvin Harrison's there, you're going to take him. So, yeah, makes sense.
The first probably difference to most people's is the LA Chargers going for Rome Odunze from Washington. Are you surprised, 1, that they have gone wide receiver, and 2, it's not Malik Neighbors, or do you think this is the right decision or not?
See, I kind of feel like Malik Neighbors is the one that I would be looking to go for. I think the reason that Odunze is getting a lot of hype at the moment to be going in this sort of position is that he is a sort of a bigger bodied receiver compared to what Neighbors is. But even still, Neighbors showed that he's a really, really good wide receiver and someone that you want to be want on your team. The other option, of course, is Brock Bowers, is someone who's been put in for the Chargers a lot, and that one kind of makes sense as well. But I think really any of them weapons would be great for them. I think they've got a real, almost like an embarrassment of riches to go for here, where it's almost like they could go for any of them. I personally would think Neighbors myself is the guy who I think is a more difficult person to be able to stop. I think Odunze, although a very good receiver and great at contested catches and stuff, he doesn't have that speed that like Neighbors does to really sort of like split the defenses. So I just feel like because of that, I'd probably be looking at Neighbors, and then you'd have Keenan Allen in the slot. Odunze, I suppose, is kind of more of a replacement for Mike Williams. Like if he goes, so it kind of, I see what they're doing. I suppose that in itself kind of makes sense. But I think I'd probably go a slightly different way. But obviously you're dealing with Jim Harbaugh now, so again, that in itself is a different thing. So it is difficult to know. I reckon he's probably gone. Jim Harbaugh would prefer a bigger wide receiver, and so therefore it kind of makes sense a little bit.
I personally think that Jim Harbaugh would prefer a tight end.
Well, that's so. This is kind of like a tight end light, isn't it? Sort of.
I think Jim Harbaugh had a lot of success with tight ends. Brock Bowers is being compared to Vernon Davis as a prospect coming out. And obviously Jim Harbaugh had success with Vernon Davis when in San Francisco. So I think that makes sense. And you're also saying that Brock Bowers, when we talk about Kyle Pitts, when he came into the draft, he was a unicorn phenomenon and what he could do in the receiving game. But Brock Bowers is being talked about how good he is because he's the complete package. He can block, he can catch, he can scheme, he can do everything. And I think that would be perfect in this point. So I don't think they need to address wide receiver with the depth of wide receivers we've got.
Yeah.
I don't think they need to go this early with the pick. So that leaves the Giants.
I think that makes. I think that kind of makes sense. And now obviously your Giants gets the guy that I imagine you would be quite happy to have here.
Happy to have him, but we've discussed this before. I feel like for me, we talked about these two. It's Odunze and Neighbors. I feel Odunze probably suits what the Giants are looking for more from a wide receiver, as we already have Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt. I think a bigger guy that can get those more contested catches, a bit more like Odunze did, would be better than Neighbors, who kind of fits the bill of what similar to what we've got. But equally, you're not going to be disappointed with getting Neighbors regardless. He's fantastic wide receiver, but definitely wide receiver is definitely the correct call here and not O-line for me.
See, a lot of people are saying O-line, aren't they, for the Giants, and that they think that that's what they need to do. I'm assuming the logic behind it is to help Daniel Jones keep him upright a bit more. So I'm guessing that's the theory behind it. But I suppose when you look at your wide receiver core, they are all the same, and there does need to be a little bit of variation in it. And someone like Odunze would probably make more sense, given the fact that he's not available here. I suppose you take the next best option in that position that you need help. So that's probably why he's gone for Neighbors.
I just feel if you need a left tackle, then pick 6, definitely go for it. But when you've already got one and you're just looking to strengthen the O-line and have a bit more depth and maybe look at replacing your right tackle or moving your right tackle, I just feel like you could address that later. We've talked about how strong this O-line class is in both tackle and guard. So a couple of hybrids in there as well that you could take that are very raw as well. So yeah, that's for me why I'm saying wide receiver is the most important for us there. That's 6.
Can I just ask, if you had the choice, which one would you take? Not specifically for the Giants, but if you had like your own team, like the way what you would want from a receiver, which one would you say is the better one that you would have?
It's really tough
because I feel like it's Harrison, and then it just drops down slightly, and then they're very level.
It is really, really tough because obviously I've followed Odunze quite a lot, and as I'm sure you can see right there, Daniel Jeremiah says Odunze was my favorite player in the draft. So it's one of them where I followed him, really like him. So I feel like I'm evaluating maybe higher, but Malik Neighbors' numbers are maybe showcasing other things. It's just whichever one you get, I think win. I wouldn't split the two of them, but personally, I think Odunze fits the bill more as a complete. I feel that there's less red flags maybe for me.
Okay,
but I know you prefer Neighbors, don't you?
Yeah, I prefer Neighbors. I just think the speed is what kills most of the defenses, and so therefore I think that's the way the NFL's going now. So that's why I would go that way. I think he separates really well, and he's got the speed to get past anyone, but he's also got the speed to drop down as well. That's the thing with him. I think he can be really quick, and then he can slow down really quickly, and then he can go off again. And I think that's how he gets the separation, and that's the difference with him.
Pick 7 is the first tackle off the board. It's Joe Alt for the Titans. Yeah, their O-line was rubbish, pretty much. So why not take what's being labelled as the best tackle in the draft? So no complaints with this one.
No, completely agree. I know that there's been a few others. Different people have put different people first when it comes to offensive tackle. But for me, I think Alt's great. He's my number one for the O-line. And Titans really struggled at that position all season. And, even if Derrick Henry's not there, they're still going to have a decent run game. And they need that O-line in order to be able to be strong enough to help the new sort of like Balcow or whoever they have as their main guy there. So, yeah, I think that Alt's the right move, definitely.
just while we're briefly on that, do you think that the Titans do bring Derrick Henry back, or do you think he said his goodbyes? It's a definite out. And do you think Taj Spears is the guy that takes over that lead back role?
I think Spears has looked good, hasn't he? He's looked impressive when he got the chance. Obviously, he didn't have a full workload because Henry was there. I don't think Henry's back. I think Henry goes somewhere else, and probably to a team that is in a better position to contend. I would have thought is what will happen with him. Obviously, the Ravens have been muted for him for quite a long time, but yeah, I would be surprised if they didn't go for someone else. It is difficult because obviously Mike Vrabel's not there now, so you sort of think, are they going to go in a completely different direction? But I think most teams you're not going to have a bell cow running back anymore. I think them days are starting to go pretty quickly.
I only ask because last year we saw Saquon and Jacobs obviously get the franchise tag and have no joy at all finding the suitor that wanted to come in for an offer on a running back. And obviously this year, those two again will be in free agency along with Pollard, Eckler. There's loads, isn't there, this year going?
Yeah, there's a few. I think
they're all a lot younger than.
Yeah, I think unfortunately for the running backs, I think now they're probably going to learn that they just can't try and get the big money anymore. I think Eckler's a prime example of it. This is what happens. I mean, this is why teams will not go for you anymore and will not pay up the big bucks for you. And you deserve to get as much as you can, but you're just not going to get it as like real top dollar compared to other positions because, Eckler was fighting for as much money as he could get last year. He came back on the franchise tag and has had a pretty bad year. And that's kind of like, so they're going, why were we going to sign you to like a 3-year deal and pay you like, I don't know, 15 million a year when you basically broke down to a certain extent this year? It's just not worth it for us. So you just sort of think, well, if that's the case, then no one's going to get it. If someone like Eckler, who was like right at the top, I mean, apart from McCaffrey, he was the next one. If he's not going to get it, why are any of them going to get it? So I just feel like with Henry, I think there'll be a couple of teams out there that will look at him as though we'll give you like a 1 year, $11 million, $12 million deal. And just like, we're going to go for it 1 year and hopefully you can just keep doing what you're doing. But that's about as far as it goes, I think.
We move on to the Atlanta Falcons at pick 8, taking Dallas Turner. This seems to be a popular pick for most mock drafts at the moment. Obviously, we discussed this last week, and I got no issue with Dallas Turner. I think he's absolutely fantastic. I think, I'm a bit hotter on Jared Verse. That's all. And also, I'm guessing, does he mention it? No, he doesn't. I'm guessing if they're not taking a quarterback at this point, people are under the impression that they're not going to draft one. They are going to seek quarterback in free agency. Do you feel like that's the way it's pointing?
Yeah, I think once you reach this point of the draft, the top 3 quarterbacks have gone. I think that you probably want someone that you feel is going to be a starter from day one. I'm not sure with the next 3 quarterbacks whether that is necessarily the case. I think there might be a little bit of apprehension about starting them all on day one. And so that's why I think free agency is probably the way forward. I'm not sure what their cap space is. I don't know if they've got plenty or not, to be honest. But I do feel like it has been sort of reported a little bit that that's probably the way they're going to go. Justin Fields is obviously really been tipped to go there, hasn't he? Originally, and now he's tipped to go to the Steelers. But there's quite a few free agency quarterbacks that maybe they could go for. So yeah, I feel like that kind of makes sense to a certain degree. And then as Daniel Jeremiah says in this, it's like they didn't have a player that recorded more than 6.5 sacks. So it's clearly an area of need. I kind of agree with you. I think Jared Verse it would be the way forward. But if they like Dallas Turner, then it's right position. I just don't know if it's the right guy personally.
Yeah, I just feel like we might have a bit of a scenario that we had a couple of years back when Walker was the guy that kind of everyone hyped up right at the end, and then obviously was taken before a certain someone else that's better than the rest. And I just feel like we might be caught into that position. But again, Walker at the Jags is still incredible, isn't he? He's not bad. So
just not quite Aiden Hutchinson.
No. Oh, hello. I actually didn't realise. Jared Verse is next off the board for the Bears. A lot of people have been double dipping on offense for the Bears. Do you think that they'll definitely need to go edge here? Obviously, they brought in Montez Sweat for a second. There's a lot of edge rushers in free agency. They've got the salary cap. Do you think they double dip on offense, or do you think, why not go after Verse if he's on the board?
See, I think Verse is probably a very good player to have, and so I can understand that's why he's gone for him. For me, I just think it's the wrong position. I feel like I would argue that O-line is something that I think they could do with a bit of help on, certainly with a new quarterback to help him out. I mean, only Joe Alt has gone so far, so you could get yourself a really good O-line guy. So that kind of feels like something that you might want to do. I don't think you go wide receiver because the top three have gone. So I don't think you would do that. And obviously there is a lot of wide receivers in this class that you can sort out maybe later on down the line. Maybe that's the reasoning behind O-line as well. Maybe that's his kind of logic, because O-line is quite strong in this draft class as well. But like you say, edge is something that there are a lot of free agents out there that you could go for. I understand it. I just think that for me personally, I think I'd probably be looking at O-line instead, just because I think you can get one of the real top guys. And defensively, they were good, weren't they, at the back end of the season? They looked very, very good. So it just kind of feels a little bit like you're kind of investing in that area again. They haven't got tons and tons of cap space, but they've got 34 million, so it's not like they're short either. So they could go out and get a couple of decent edge rushers if they really wanted to. I just, to me, I think O-line.
Yeah, I thought their O-line performed better than it has.
I think it probably just is an area that can be improved. I mean, I think the Bears are in a position where they're not far away. They're really not. So,
Yeah, well, they're in a weak division, aren't they now? So.
Oh yeah.
Pick 10, the New York Jets is Tise Fuaga, a guy that's been flying up boards since Senior Bowl. I think this was actually picked before the Senior Bowl, so he was on the train before the Senior Bowl. We've said previously the Jets definitely need O-line help, and I think Fuaga can play tackle, guard. I think he played right tackle, left tackle, and guard. So one big guy, definitely worth it here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the obvious position. The only other one I would come out and say is wide receiver. Again, like the Bears pick, though, the top three are gone. So I think it's an obvious one. They're all in on Aaron Rodgers. They've got to do something. The defense is still a very good defense. It just sort of faltered a bit because it had so much pressure on it last year. O-line's the right move. And really, once you reach this point when Joel's gone, it is Fuaga or Olu Fashanu, isn't it? Who are your two choices? And
I didn't realise Fashanu hadn't gone yet. I probably would have gone Fashanu. Fashanu, surely.
No, not necessarily. I think Fuaga's look pretty good. I mean, I kind of have them pretty similar. To me, I have Joel up there, and then these two reasonably similar as the 2 and 3. But yeah, I think it's probably just personal preference. Maybe the versatility they like on Fuaga a bit more. He's definitely, like you say, someone who can play across the whole of the O-line, and they've got more than one missing piece in the O-line, to be honest. They kind of need a few gaps. So maybe he's ideal because of that.
Definitely. Pick 11, the Minnesota Vikings taking Byron Murphy, the first interior defensive lineman off the board. He thinks he is the top defensive tackle in the class, and Vikings need more help, firepower up front. I'm happy to agree with him that Byron Murphy may be the best defensive tackle instead of Newton after what we've seen from him at the back end of the year. So do you feel like this is the key area that the Vikings need to look at?
I think they could do with a bit of help at corner. I would argue that they would need a bit of that. I don't think their corners have been amazing. However, I do think that defensive tackle is something that isn't, they could do with that. That's something that would help them. I think offensively, I feel like the O-line could probably do with a bit of help, but aside from that, I think they're pretty strong on the offensive side of things. I mean, they've got all the weapons that they need. I mean, running back, you're not going to take one here. So if you bring Kirk Cousins back, I think they're pretty sorted. So yeah, I mean, linebacker is another area that they could maybe do with a little bit of help. But yeah, I think it's
either, are you?
No, exactly. So I think because of that, I think it's a fairly solid pick to make. And yeah, I mean, him or Newton are your two that like you said, you would look at here. But I think that he's decent. But maybe corner, you could get the number one corner, couldn't you, of the class? So I suppose it depends what you value more.
That was definitely, that was the first question I was going to ask you. We haven't had a corner off the board yet, and we're all talking about how there's loads of good corners in this. We're at pick 11. We haven't seen one. They've got their pick of them. There is probably a few. I think there's 5 defensive tackles for me that I really like in this draft, and I think you could probably get one of them a lot later. So there's probably not. I think there's going to be a run of cornerbacks in the first round through to the early second round. So if you don't address it early, you're probably going to miss out on one of them. And then we have our first corner. The Denver Broncos taking Terrion Arnold from Alabama. I think Arnold could go as high as 5th overall. He's the best cornerback in the draft, and he would pair nice with Satan. That would be a scary cornerback room at the Broncos. Terrion Arnold's a really good athlete. I think that's what separates him from Kool-Aid for me. It's just the athleticism, because I do think Kool-Aid's a fantastic guy. He's been my number one cornerback for a long time. I don't think the Broncos need to address cornerback again. Most teams only have one incredible cornerback and then some good cornerbacks. Do you think they need to address quarterback now? Have the Broncos got a second round pick? I don't think they have they?
No, they haven't. This is kind of this is their move sort of thing where they have to do. I think corner is something that they could do, but I don't think it's a desperate need for them. I think they would be better off if they could switch with the Vikings here. I think defensive tackle would be a bit more helpful for them, so that would be something that would be helpful. I mean, the Broncos' issue is really it's quarterback, isn't it? I mean, you kind of feel like this is where maybe one of the quarterbacks should be taken, and they are not in a position to go out and get themselves a veteran. They are in really bad ways when it comes to cap space. So I don't think they're going to be doing that this year. I mean, they could stick with Russell Wilson, but they clearly don't want to, and have made it pretty public that they don't want to. So it kind of feels almost like they would be an ideal trade up candidate. I mean, we've seen the 49ers trade from 12 to 3 before, and this is something that maybe if their guy is still there at number 3, they could do. I think this pick kind of makes sense if you don't think about trading or anything else with it, and you just go, oh no, we'll keep Russell Wilson and that's fine. I think Sean Payton will want to draft a quarterback.
Yeah, I want his guy.
Yeah.
He's maybe not my favorite that's left, but I think Bo Nix fits perfectly for the Broncos. Obviously, he was a scheme guy and had success at Oregon, and I feel like he understands that well, and he's had the most experience of all the quarterbacks in this draft. So I feel like he would pair up quite nicely with Sean Payton as the Broncos quarterback. So I don't think 12 is too high to be looking at taking Bo Nix either. Do you think that's the right guy for the job here?
Yeah, I think Nick's. I think you might see people come out and say McCarthy. I think that could be it as well. It's someone that you don't necessarily need fancy plays all the time from, but you do need, like, I suppose, we've been saying it in a derogatory term for Brock Purdy, but kind of like a game manager would probably be ideal, and Sean Payton could just get him to do what he wanted and do that sort of thing. I do wonder if that might be the way. So yeah, Bo Nix might be a one to go for. JJ McCarthy might be one to go for, but I have a sneaking suspicion he will want to make a big move. I really do.
This could be a point on the list that maybe wide receiver might be if they're going to wait on a quarterback. I think Jerry Jeudy's maybe, people are out on him now, might be traded. Mims has looked okay, and Cortland Sutton's struggles with injury and not getting any younger.
I think if that's the case, then I think you trade back and try and get picks, because obviously you don't have a second round pick. Maybe that's their move. Maybe they do something like that, trade back and take a wide receiver and get a second round pick out of it. It could possibly be what they're going to go for, but yeah, I don't know. It's just you know what Payton's like. He wants to make a splash, doesn't he? So
he needs his guy, because when it's not his guy, we have what we had this year, which didn't end well. We finally got Olu Fashanu off the board. The Las Vegas Raiders. Teams are split on Fashanu. After dominating 2022 season, he took a step back in 2023. But the talent is still immense. I don't know if they're going O-line, this is win for them, surely. Yeah,
absolutely. I think this is an area that they need. Again, another team that you could argue need quarterback as well. But I just think that, given, like I say, the top three are gone, I think that this is the way forward. He's the next best O-line. I think it drops after this as well. Not considerably, but I do think it drops after the first three have gone. So, yeah. To me, it just seems like an obvious pick for him.
Yeah, and I think what's really good about this is he's not going to have to come in and play left tackle either. Obviously, Colton Miller has been brilliant for them, and Dylan Parham's been good as well, the other youngster. So I think the rest of their O-line is free agents. So coming in at right tackle, I think this works perfectly for him. The pressure's off a little bit, so definitely the right decision. Another team, though, that you could argue desperate for a quarterback. Still none off the board. Do you see them making a move that just feel like, Jimmy G or Aiden O'Connell sit for another year? Do you think they look at free agency? Where do you see them going on that point of view?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it, with the Raiders? You never quite know what they're going to do. They do have quite a bit of cap space, so I do wonder whether they're more likely to go for a veteran. They seem to have done that quite often, that they go for the veteran. So I do wonder if they'll stick to that sort of route. I think a veteran is probably more likely than drafting one on this. And because you've got the cap space to do it as well, that it kind of makes a bit more sense for them to do it. Whereas I think with the Broncos, because you're in that sort of position, you kind of need to draft one.
Yeah, they could maybe have a shot at Russell Wilson, who's probably going to be the most expensive of the lot. There's our next quarterback, the Saints. Well, before I read it out, last time we did Mel Kiper's, we were like, why have you picked wide receiver for the Saints? They don't need a wide receiver. They're fine. And then we get to the Saints again, and they're taking Bo Nix. But Derek Carr's got a fairly big contract, hasn't he? I can't see them wanting a move off of him yet. He's a big fan of Nick's experience, all the things that we said, plug and play. Yeah, he said all the things that we said previously about Nick's, but thinks that the Saints don't view Derek Carr as the answer. Even if they don't see him as the answer, I don't think they address it this season. So I think this is the first error.
Yeah, I think that I kind of get the logic of thinking, right, so Derek Carr's not the guy, so therefore we're going to get Bo Nix. We can't get a veteran because we have no money at all. So let's go and get the guy that we want at quarterback. I understand that. I can kind of get with that. It's not an area that they desperately need because they've got Derek Carr. Derek Carr's signed up for 2 more years. There's not much of an out for them that's going to make much of a difference. I think to a certain degree, I think you're probably going to have to just suck it up and move on with it. This is what happens when you play with the credit card for too long. Eventually you've got to pay it, and you're in that time now. So I don't quite get it. I suppose maybe they think that this is the way of getting around it, but I feel like Bo Nix isn't the special talent that you would want to be able to get around it, kind of thing. So I just don't really see it. For me, O-line, I think is probably the way forward.
Okay.
Just to improve on the O-line, help with the running game. I didn't think the running game was fantastic last year, so I think a bit of O-line would help them. And maybe even edge or sort of defensive tackle, someone like a Jason Newton wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I can't remember the guy who's been there forever. He's getting older on the D line. Cam Newton. Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan. I was close. Cam Jordan. I don't know how old he is now, but he's another year older.
He's in his 30s, isn't he?
Yeah, and sort of like mid 30s as well. And you kind of feel like maybe do like what the Eagles do. The whole sort of like draft the guy whilst he's still there and replace him eventually. Maybe that's the way forward. Don't quite get the Bo Nix one myself.
Yeah, I'm not with you on the O-line either. I think, they've got some nice pieces. They've got Trevor Penning. They've got Cesar Ruiz and players like that. I don't think they've only got one player going into free agency, and obviously Trevor Penning will probably replace him anyway. So I would agree that edge rusher, Loatu Latu's still there on the board. Chop Robinson's still there as well. And as you said, their edges currently are Granderson and Cam Jordan. And like we said, Cam Jordan's 34. So I think they need to bring in some youngsters. They got Brian Breesy last year. So I feel like he could come in the interior. So edge for me would be the area that I would be looking at for the Saints. I'd completely forgot that this player, next, hadn't come off the board yet. Indianapolis Colts taking Brock Bowers. Bowers is going to be tricky to place in mock drafts. The time suggests he should be a top 5 pick, but debate about the positional value could push him down as far as the Colts at 15. I think someone's taken a punt on him. Tight ends, we've talked about it a lot over the last 2 years, that it's not a position to be forgotten about. And it's a bit of a game changer now for teams to have a really good, strong, talented tight end. And Brock Bowers is that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he kind of screams Chargers. He really does. To me, as you said, you think that Jim Harbaugh would prefer a tight end. Well, this would make sense then. So I do feel like that's the way forward. I don't feel like tight end is a desperate need for the Colts. They do have a couple of tight ends, so it does feel a little bit like it's not the main thing that they should be going for. I think the defense, just in general, needs a bit of help given the amount of points that they were giving up in every game last year. That just feels like a given to me that's where this should be going. So I'm a little surprised that he's gone for Bowers. It kind of almost feels like I need to get him in. So this is a place where you could argue Pittman's gone into free agency. If they might need another receiving option, here's Brock Bowers. So that kind of feels like what the point of this one is. But to me, I think it's not quite the right spot for him.
Yeah, I'd argue at tight end they've got Jelani Woods coming back, who looked like a nice little prospect until he had his season-ending injury, and we didn't see anything of him this year. I think Granson played all right, and then Mo Ali Cox as tight end 3. So they've got 3 good youngsters in at tight end that all look valuable. So yeah, I don't see the value in going Brock Bowers here. I agree. I've made the point before, made it at the back end of the year as well, that when Grover Stewart got injured, they just fell to pieces a little bit and couldn't stop the run. So Newton for me here, if he's still on the board, filling in on that defensive tackle position would be perfect. So yeah, I feel like that. Or we haven't seen many corners go off the board, so maybe they just add depth at the cornerback position as well. But yeah, I think defensive tackle here for me. We move on to the Seattle Seahawks at pick 16, taking Troy Fontenot from Washington. The Seahawks continue to add young talent to their offensive line. Fontenot would slide right in at guard in Seattle and can play tackle in a pinch. I'm not sure whether O-line is the correct pick for the Seahawks. They've got some really nice young pieces on there, and they can just bolster up later on in the draft. And also another team that might be looking for a quarterback. Adam, do you think they should be going tackle here?
I'm not against it. I think that it's always about improving the O-line. I think is a good move. Geno Smith is going to be getting his extra money, isn't he? That they owe to him. It's going to become fully guaranteed. They announced earlier today, so it kind of makes you feel like they're going to stick with Geno. I think O-line help would help him, so that's no bad thing. I do think like maybe defensive tackle might be the way forward. Edge is another one that you could go for if you wanted to. They're actually quite a solid team when you look at them. There's not that many massive holes for them, so I think that it's not the worst idea in the world to keep on bolstering the O-line and keep on making it a bit younger. I think that it'll work for them, but I think really it's more just a matter of opinion at the time of who's around. I do wonder if it's a feeling of almost like best player available for them.
Yeah, I think if Brock Bowers still is on the board at this point, I think that might be the perfect position for him to fall if they did go down that line. I do think they do need to address. They're another team that hasn't got a second round pick. I do think they bring back Leonard Williams. I don't think they let him go after they traded for him. And that defense, the secondary is really, really good. A couple of really nice cornerbacks in there. I'm just trying to work out whether there'd be any other position they'd really need to look at.
I don't think there's any, like I say, I mean, you could argue maybe linebacker, but again, I just don't think you're going to take one at this point. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one you could argue, but that's kind of the point, isn't it? The positions that you sort of think to yourself they might need a bit of help at, then that's something that you could do later on in the draft. So I do feel it's a bit best player available. It's probably the way forward. He's gone for Font now. I mean, he's a very good player. So yeah, I can see why you would do it.
And got the Washington connections. He's not going far, is he? So
exactly. Moving costs.
We move on to pick 17. The Jacksonville Jaguars take in Quinion Mitchell. Mitchell had a ton of production in 2022, 5 interceptions, 20 pass breakups, but wasn't challenged as much in 2023. He is incredibly gifted and will put on a show when it comes to his athletic testing. Now, he's at Toledo. It's a guy that I've not seen loads of. I mean, Jeremiah's pointed out there that he wasn't challenged as much in 2023, but we did have now the opportunity to see him at the Senior Bowl, in which he dominated everybody who went up against him. So he's now proved that he can do it against some bigger names. So he's shooting up boards as well. Jacksonville definitely need help at corner, don't they? I think we've had corner in there every time we've looked at it. So happy with this pick?
Yeah, I think it's a really good pick. To be honest, anywhere in the defense I think would help when it comes to Jacksonville. But yeah, corner is certainly one area that I think would help them. As you said, Mitchell had a great Senior Bowl, has looked really, really good, and I think they would probably be lucky to get him, to be honest, at this position. I think he might go a bit higher than this. But yeah, I mean, corner, I think, is no bad thing for them to do.
Well, Kool-Aid McKinstry's still there. Cooper DeJean's still there. So I think that regardless, one of the three is going to be available at this point. So that's definitely where I think they should address. Pick 18 is the Cincinnati Bengals taking J.C. Latham. The Bengals have to address that. Yeah, I mean, I don't need to read it because we know exactly this. Everyone's got O-line here as well, haven't they? It's a must.
Yeah,
it's a must. If they don't keep Joe Burrow fit, and they've got no chance.
Yeah, I think there's two things here. It's O-line and wide receiver again, but I just feel like with the top three wide receivers gone, you go O-line. I think having Latham there is a great option for them as well, and it's all about keeping Burrow fit and upright, as you say. And yeah, I think Latham's a great one for you to be able to get at this point. So it's exactly what the Bengals need to be doing.
Yeah, he was my number 3 offensive tackle for the majority of the process all the way through the season till Fuaga started to creep up boards. I had Latham down as my number 3. So to get him at this point is fantastic. He's from Alabama. You know, I think he's a really good prospect. I think he says there Latham has a lot to go in the top 10. Should be still available at 18. So he's saying all the same things. They're not after a wide receiver 1. They've got Jamar Chase. So I think just looking later in the draft to bolster that, there's a lot of really, really talented guys you can get in round 2 and 3 to support Chase. So yeah, O-line must for them.
Yeah.
Pick 19, the Los Angeles Rams taking Latu. I wouldn't rule out a quarterback at this pick. The Rams could follow the Packers' Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love blueprint and begin developing a pass rusher behind Stafford. If they don't go that route, they continue to add pass rushers, which would be a smart move. I think all of us have got them taking an edge rusher at this point, and Latu at the point as well. It's fantastic. Yeah. I think Matthew Stafford's got two more really good years in him. So edge rushers and O-line for me for the Rams.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think edge is kind of the obvious one, really, myself. I think that someone would be able to get someone like Latu would be brilliant for them at this position. I hear what you're saying with the QB theory. I'm not sure if the Rams are necessarily this type of team that are going to do that, though. They never have before. So it kind of feels that it's not something that they would do. Whereas for obviously the Packers have done it before, and it's not an uncommon way of them doing it. So really many people shouldn't have been mega shocked when you actually look at the history of it. But yeah, I think when you look at O-line and edge at this position, I think Latu is probably a very good choice to be going for. So yeah, I think that makes sense, and gets that defense a bit younger, a bit more help for Aaron Donald as well. And yeah, why not? It's a good pick at this point.
Yeah, again, another guy that's not really going too far from his college, from UCLA to the Rams. Pick 20, the Pittsburgh Steelers, taking Amarius Mims. The Steelers go back to Georgia after selecting Broderick Jones, Darnell Washington, and George Pickens. Mims would join Jones to give Pittsburgh a pair of athletic bookends. 2 positions they can really go with this. Obviously, we talked about O-line for God knows how many years with the Steelers. They just can't seem to get it right. And cornerback might need some help. But Mims, again, I had him a lot higher than pick 20 when I was originally first ever looking at the draft. So this is a fantastic pick for them. But do you think corner's more important considering they have got Broderick Jones?
I think it's a very difficult one because I think O-line is going to be very important for them based on having Arthur Smith there and the run game. I think that's something that they're going to have to invest in. And so someone like Mims, who, has serious size, like he really does. He's a potential real difference maker. He's the issue with him is that he hasn't played that much. But I still feel that he's someone that would be worth taking a punt on. But yeah, corner is definitely something that they need to address, and I suppose it depends if they feel that they can do that in the second round by getting a good enough corner there. I suppose they went corner, didn't they, first round last year with Joey Porter? So I think
No, they
they're
went second round, didn't they?
was that second round? I thought it was the first round.
No, I think
Okay, maybe they look okay. But I don't know. To me, I feel like O-line might be more important for what they want to do offensively now.
Yeah, I've just looked at their O-line just to see what it is. They're all coming back. There's no free agents. Looks like they don't look horrendous at O-line.
But the problem is that the run game just didn't really garner that much this year. That was the problem. It's like it was okay, and actually towards the end it seemed to get a little bit better, but it didn't really do what the Steelers need it to do. So it's like, it's all right, I'm coming back, but I just don't know if they're necessarily good enough.
Yeah, I'm just having a look, see where else they might be weak, but unless they're looking at maybe edge rusher again, if Larry Ogunjobi's not there, obviously they're quite old at tackle, defensive tackle as well. Yeah, I think O-line and cornerback, it doesn't really matter. And as we've said, there's no massive big run of cornerbacks that I thought we might see on this draft yet. So they can definitely address it in the second round. Whereas O-line, we've seen quite a few names come off the board. So that's going to then start to, dwindle down a little bit. So yeah, I like the thinking here. Pick 21 is the Miami Dolphins. He's lost the plot on this one, I think, a little bit. Come on. Miami Dolphins taking Brian Thomas, the wide receiver from LSU. Do they really need another wide receiver when they've got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? Do they need to give Tua more people to throw to? Brian Thomas is an incredible player as well. I think there's plenty of teams that could have taken him prior to this as well that we spoke about.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's not a need, is it? I mean, if you've got a Hill and Waddle, it really isn't a need. The argument will probably be that Hill's getting a bit older, but I don't really see it as much of an argument. I mean, he's got 2 years left on his deal. Waddle is been great whenever I mean, he's had a few injuries, but he hasn't been that bad this year. I don't think. I think he's been pretty solid. I just don't think it's needed. I'm not quite sure what I suppose the logic is. It's just more speed. If we have more speed, then we'll win more. I didn't think they were great defensively, I have to say. I think that's the area that they need to go on. And to be honest, I would argue just best player available on the defense. So that's something.
We lost you briefly then, Adam.
Okay, I think that's something that they need to be looking at. Myself is just best player available on the defense. Yeah, I don't. You could go O-line if you wanted to, just to continue to help Tua stay in, but really it's the defense that needs to help.
It's definitely, that's what crumbled at the back end of the year, and that's the reason that they didn't go any further than what they did. The defense crumbled. I know it had injuries. I know they lost Jalen Phillips, and they lost Bradley Chubb as well.
Yeah.
But, they were beaten over the top quite a few times as well, weren't they? I suppose David Howard's not getting any younger. I think getting pressure on the quarterback was their biggest downfall, I think, at the back end of the year. So I think they definitely need to. I think Chop Robinson maybe at this point might be a nice pick for them at 21. But yeah, definitely not wide receiver. Pick 22, the Philadelphia Eagles taking Tyler Guyton. I've seen this a lot. A lot of people saying they need to find a replacement for Lane Johnson. Are we not forgetting how horrendous their corners were at the end of the year? I mean, they've got two old men. I know they've got what they picked up Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks, didn't they? So maybe they think their second year they might be as good as what they were at college and fill in for them. But their O-line's still pretty decent, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that it is definitely getting older, and it is something that needs sorting out. And I think there is an element of you probably do need to sort it out sooner rather than later. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with too many holes there. So I do kind of get the logic of the pick. I think it, to a certain extent, it is the right move, but corner was a massive issue for them. So I do agree with that, and that is something that they need to sort out, because I think if they don't, then they're going to have the same problems this for next season as what they've had for this season, and so that is a real issue.
O-line's not as old as what you think it is. Obviously, Kelsey's retired, but Lane Johnson is 33, but Cam Jurgens is 24. Landon Dickerson's 25, and Jordan Mailata's 26. So it's not as aging as what everybody thinks it is. I don't think. I think they got rid of a few of the other ones and brought in the youngsters. But yeah, corner definitely, surely.
Yeah.
Address O-line a little bit later. I've just said it's not.
Yeah. I mean, O-line's strong, isn't it? So it does make sense in this class to go further back. And we all know that Howie loves a trade, so it's entirely possible he can get some more picks to do that as well.
Yeah, maybe if Brian Thomas is still on the board at that point, then they might just go wide receiver.
You never know.
There's the guy we've been talking about over a few of the picks. It's Chop Robinson. Not necessarily going to the team I thought he would be going to. Houston Texans taking an edge rusher in Chop Robinson from Penn State. Robinson joins last year's number 3 overall pick, Bill Anderson, and potentially Jonathan Greenard if the Texans are able to retain the pending free agent. Yeah, I think he's right there that they don't need edge rusher. Adam, how do you feel about this pick?
I think if Greenard goes, then it's a good pick. That's kind of the logic behind this one, I think. So if he leaves them in free agency, this is a guy that you want to be able to bring in. To a certain extent, even if he stays, edge is just some extra depth. You can never have too many edge rushers, and I think that on the offense, I actually think they look pretty settled this year. So defensively, it is the right way. They could go corner. Corner's another one here that you could argue would be a good move, but it's not a bad pick. I think, again, we've said corners. There are quite a few corners that you could go for. I'm not sure where they are later on in the draft, like second round. I don't know. I think they're just further back, aren't they? Like same again kind of thing. They haven't got any more picks. So, yeah, I think it's not a bad pick, but corner is another option, I think.
Yeah, I think obviously that the only real one need is something you wouldn't address just yet. I think they actually might address it in free agency. I think these are one of the candidates to take one of those running backs. Not sure if Singletary's coming back. Pierce didn't really do anything at all that we thought he might this year. So that leaves them quite weak at running back.
One thing I would say is I think this is a very, very good candidate for a veteran running back.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of money that they could do that.
I said. One of the guys that we mentioned at the top of the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely, if they go out and get, I think Saquon would be a good one here.
Yeah, Saquon. I think Josh Jacobs would be a good one here. Personally, I think that wouldn't be a bad one. Any of these running backs, if they really wanted to, if you wanted to go for the 1 year option on Derrick Henry sort of thing, this would kind of make sense. So I think this is definitely a veteran running back. Yeah, I think edge is I wouldn't say it's a desperate need, but it's a need where you always need more of them. So.
Yeah, they'll be stacked at that position for many a year with Will Anderson and Chop Robinson, then, won't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you kind of need that in their division as well. That kind of, when you're AFC as well, you definitely need good edges. The 24th pick, the Dallas Cowboys taking Jordan Morgan. We discussed this last time. They definitely need help at O-line, tackle. I keep saying every year they're one injury away from their season being done every time. So I just don't know whether it's flashy enough for the Cowboys to pick, but it's definitely their number one need.
Yeah, it's an obvious pick. It's one that they should be going for. Whether they do, as you say, is another matter. But makes complete sense. I think Morgan's a good O lineman, so yeah, completely understand it.
Pick number 25 is your Green Bay Packers, taking Graham Barton from Duke, a guy that I've watched quite a bit of tape on and like. Do you think you go O-line or do you think you go D-line?
It wouldn't surprise me if they went either, to be brutally honest. It's what we always do. I think Barton is great. He's very versatile, and that's everything that the Packers always go for when it comes to O-line and D-line guys. So I think that Barton is a very good option to go for. I would come out and say that they need a bit of help in the middle of that defense. Safety would be useful, but again, it's not something that you go for here. Edge rusher you could look at doing if you wanted to go sort of D-line edge rush, that kind of thing. But I think Barton is a good, solid option here for an O-line which actually really came together at the end of the season, but I would argue does still need a bit of help. And we don't know what's happening with Bakhtiari. That's a big problem. So I'm not saying that Barton would be his replacement, because I don't believe that he would be, but I think that he would be a good solid O-lineman to have in the middle, who as a guard probably, who you could then maybe put some of the more experienced guys out on left and right tackle.
I'll put it to you, as you are a Packers fan. Eric Stokes struggles to stay fit. Jair Alexander, although he's one of the best, gets banged up a lot. We've still got Cooper DeJean and Kool-Aid McKinstry on the board. Would you not go corner just to support that cornerback group, because it does struggle to stay fit every year?
Yeah, I do think that corner is a very good option for him. Personally, it would be DeJean for me. I think that would make an awful lot of sense as well. And you might argue that someone like Barton could drop to the second round pick, where they've got the Jets second round pick. So early second round there. So someone like Barton, or certainly a solid O-lineman that can do similar things. So Barton is by no means the only obvious pick here. Like I said, I think DeJean would be a good one. I'd be happy with either of them, to be brutally honest, because I think it's the areas that they need. So yeah, I could certainly see a corner being the way forward, but I can also understand why Jeremiah's picked Barton in this one.
Pick 26, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking Anis Rackshaw. He loves Rackshaw's toughness and competitiveness. He fits in with the Bucs mold with Todd Bowles. I think they need to go. Wide receiver, don't they? They need to address that. I think they're going to have issues at wide receiver next year, aren't they? And I'm not sure Rackshaw's. I personally not sure whether he's first round talent. I think he's high end second round talent. I need to see more from him. Adam, your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions here with the Bucs this offseason, and when it comes to free agency, they do have quite a bit of cap space, so they can make moves, but it's really going to depend on how much they spend on Baker, and how much they spend on Mike Evans. And then obviously once them two questions are sorted out, you could probably work out where they're going to go a little bit easier. Like you say, wide receiver makes sense, but if you do stay with Evans and Godwin, then they probably don't need to go down that route. I think O-line might be useful here, but again, it kind of feels like the O-line guys are sort of running out a little bit. Corner, just some help in the defense in general. I mean, corner's not an awful position for him to be going at, so I get it. I think it's I think they're a very difficult team to answer at the moment because of all the free agency stuff that they need to get sorted out.
Yeah, I think they need to pay Baker, Levante David, and Anton Winfield. So
yeah,
I don't think they bring back Mike Evans. I think he's on how old is he now?
I think he's
He is
30,
he's
31.
He's 30.
Oh, 30, okay.
He'll be 31 before the season starts. So that leaves them with Chris Godwin and Russell Gage and Trey Palmer.
Yeah, and at that point, if that's the case, and then they're not going to go out in free agency and get anyone in, then they need to be bringing in a wide receiver. I would argue Brian Thomas would be ideal and should be around at this pick. So I think that someone like him would be ideal for him.
If it's not Brian Thomas and he's already gone, because I think he will already be gone, I think. But who do you think would the next one for them might be?
I suppose Franklin would be the obvious one next. That would kind of make the most sense to me. Yeah, I think there's kind of three main wide receivers, and then the next two, isn't there? Which is basically Franklin and Thomas. So yeah, Franklin would make sense.
Yeah, I do think Keon Coleman fits well for them because I think Trey Palmer will go in at slot.
I suppose as a replacement for Evans, he would be the sort of body size type, wouldn't he? That would make sense.
Yeah. Likes a contested catch. That's what you that's a downfall for you, isn't it?
Can't separate for his life.
Loves a contested catch. Very good at it.
The contested catch is not the downfall; it's the can't separate is the downfall.
That's because that's why he's got to have a contested catch. Finally, we've got Cooper DeJean coming off the board. I think he's going before 27. The Arizona Cardinals taking Cooper DeJean. Again, we've already had a pick from them. Do you think corner is where they go with this? Do you think they double dip on offense? Do you think they need help at edge? Where they could go a lot of places, couldn't they?
Yeah, they've got quite a few holes on that defense. I think it needs a bit of help. DeJean, I think, is one of the better corners. I think if this happens, it'd be ideal for them. I really do. There are other options, but I do think that someone like DeJean would be great for them and would really help that defense out.
Yeah, I've got anything on defense probably is good for them.
Yeah.
They need to sort everything out. The Buffalo Bills at pick 28 taking Jazon Newton, a guy that obviously we've mentioned quite a few times already in this podcast. The Bills are they're a pretty complete team, and they add another good player in Newton. He gives Buffalo more pass rush juice on the interior. Well, I agree with that. Another team that might need wide receiver, Franklin would be.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that this wasn't wide receiver. I was also, when he came out and said they're a pretty complete team, I don't think at wide receiver they're going to be a pretty complete team when you go into this season. Gabe Davis is a free agent.
Yep.
I know Khalil Shakir is there and looks decent. And obviously you've got Kincaid and Diggs is still signed up to them, but we don't know what's happening with Diggs. He wasn't a happy bunny, was he, at the end of the season? And it kind of felt like he wanted out. So that feels a little unanswered at the moment. To me, I think wide receiver, especially with Franklin's still available. So I think you're still in that position where you want to do everything you can to help Josh Allen. So that just kind of feels like a bit of an obvious one to me. There are some other spots. I do get why maybe someone like Newton, given his talent, would seem appealing. I just think wide receiver is probably a bit more of an obvious need at the moment.
Well, they've got serious cap issues next year, haven't they?
Yeah, I believe so.
I think they're probably going to have to get rid of Poyer. They're probably going to have to get rid of Tre'Davious White, maybe.
I mean, they've got some pretty serious cap issues anyway.
Well, yeah, I just said they had bad cap.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, like they're like now they're in trouble. Yeah,
well, they're never going to re-sign them. They are contracted. I'm just thinking they might want to trade them, get rid of them, cut them. So I think their secondary is going to be the area. It's always injured, isn't it? So I think that's why they might move on from a lot of those guys. So yeah, I think with the names we've got at cornerback still on the board, I think maybe corner if they don't go wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly an option for them. Like I say, I think there's quite a few options that they can go for. I think edge wouldn't be the worst idea in the world.
They definitely don't need edge, surely.
Well, Von Miller wasn't great, was he?
Gregory Rousseau, AJ Epinesa.
You can always have another edge rusher.
I think corner. I've even forgot about him. The next person off the board would have been great.
Yeah.
Pick 29, Nate Wiggins. Some people's number one corner. Wiggins is a height, weight, speed corner. He's very rangy and will help the Lions defense and should often be playing with a lead given the team's talent on offense. I think this is the correct pick for them, isn't it? That was their area of weakness all year, and Nate Wiggins is incredible. I completely forgot he was there.
Yeah. We were saying, weren't we, for most of the season, the offense is sorted. The pass rush actually isn't too bad. It could do with a little bit of help, maybe, but it's not too bad. The problem is that you can beat them over the top all the time, and so corner is an obvious one. If Wiggins is here at this point, then happy days for the Lions. That's exactly what you want.
Pick 30, the Baltimore Ravens, taking Troy Franklin. Not opposed to this either. That would be fantastic for them if they could land Troy Franklin. I think, although, is he going to be running around in a similar position as Zay Flowers? Is Zay Flowers going to be banned next year? I don't know. So, yeah, how do you feel about this one?
I think it's certainly a area that they need a bit of help in. I don't think it's really worked with Odell Beckham. I don't think it's really worked with Rashad Bateman either. I think both of them haven't really done much. I know they've got Flowers in there, but it does feel a little bit like you've got Flowers and Andrews, and then not a lot else. So I do think a wide receiver is a good move for them. They've got a few of this defense that has been so great are going to become free agents, aren't they?
Madubuike, who I would have thought they'd bring back. Clowney, I don't think they will. Patrick Queen, I think they will bring back, and Geno Stone, I think they'll bring back.
Yeah, so it's really going to be dependent on what they can do there, because they do have a little bit of cap space, but they haven't got a lot by all means. So it's not going to be something that they can bring everyone back and sort that out. So I do think that there could be some potential need to go there, but I completely get why he's gone for Troy Franklin at this point. It makes sense to me that they need a wide receiver to bolster that receiver room.
Yeah, I think their defense manages to get the best out of anybody who's there. I mean, a lot of the names on there weren't like massive first round picks. So I think they can a talented enough team to just bring anybody in. So offense they need to address. And Beckham won't be back. I don't think. He's a free agent, and Bateman's a free agent the following year. So yeah, and as I said, we don't know what's happening with Zay Flowers yet, do we? Obviously, he got himself in a bit of trouble, so might need to address it now. San Francisco 49ers taking Kool-Aid McKinstry, finally off the board for me at this point. I like this pick. I think they might need some help in the secondary, and it's like a luxury pick, this, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they don't have many holes, do they? That's how come they got to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, there's not a lot of areas that they need loads of help in. I think you could argue corner, just as a bit more depth there, is not the worst thing in the world. There's very little on the offense that you would want to do to it. So yeah, I think something like McKinstry at this point, I think is definitely worth doing.
And pick 32 is the Kansas City Chiefs taking Devontae Walker. Now we know that this was done before the Senior Bowl, because surely no one in their right mind is taking Tez Walker after his display of the whole week, not being able to catch anything. He is not getting into round one anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, what's happened, but I do think the position is the right position to be going for. I think it's what they probably do need. It is Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce at the moment, and I mean the others sort of pop up here and there, but it's very difficult to have any sort of like confidence in them. Marquez Valdes-Scantling will be gone. I would have thought. He is a free agent, and I think they save quite a lot of money if they get rid of him, so he won't be there. So yeah, they need to replace them and get in a wide receiver. Walker obviously isn't the guy. I think they'd be love. I mean, they might even trade up to try and get someone like Franklin. I think that's the position that they're in at the moment. I'm not quite sure who you go for after this. I mean, they might go for someone like Xavier Worthy, who's got the speed. That's something a bit different that they don't have since Tyreek Hill left. So I do wonder if that's the move, really.
Yeah, for me, I was going to say Xavier Worthy would probably fit the bill for them. He's a bit of a speedster, fits in well with that kind of thing. And Rashee Rice does play a lot bigger than what he is, so that's fine. So yeah, I think a lot of people were hoping Troy Franklin would be here at this point, because that's who they want them all to have. But that completes the draft, Adam. Not many, two ones that we properly disagreed with. But on the whole, a great start for Jeremiah. I think he's not going to have to edit too much for that in his 2.0, is he?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the obvious one that is just very strange is the Miami Dolphins one. That's the one that feels the sort of the most peculiar one out of the whole lot, to be honest. That one, I'm not sure with that one. Maybe he lost his senses on that one, but yeah, the rest of it is pretty close. And I think even if it's not the right guys, it's the right positions. I think that's the main thing, and kind of where the strengths are as well in this year's class.
Yeah, we'll have another one next week, I think. So if you want to put another poll out and see who everybody wants to do, obviously Joel Clapp released his yesterday. I've already listened to it because I listened to his podcast. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's very interesting as well. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but
I haven't seen the video. I've heard a couple of things. There's some interesting choices, isn't there? I believe.
Well, I don't want to give it away, but there's 6 of one position that might be going in the first round that maybe a lot of other people haven't had. So yeah, put it out. We'll have a few names on that, and we'll do another one next week. But till then, keep it with the franchise tag, and we will see you again soon.